talk about fascinating, we talk about inspiring, I am absolutely thrilled to have as my guest today the fabulous Kirthiga Reddy. Kirthiga does not need any intro for most of you. I'm sure all of you are aware of her. But in case there is anyone out there who isn't, she is a venture partner for SoftBank's Vision Fund. She is SoftBank's first female investing partner, breaking many glass ceilings or shattering many glass ceilings. These one of the glass ceilings she has shattered. She was a former managing director of Facebook India, as many of you will remember, and she has the distinction of being the first employee of Facebook India and went on to build the company to what we know it today as. Kritika is also a great friend. It's someone I have known for ages. And what I'll say about Kritika, um, in addition to her wonderful CV or wonderful resume, is she's an amazing human being who has tremendous passion to change the world. And I absolutely believe that if there's one person who can do it, it is Kritika. Uh, her passion is what keeps her going. And the second thing about Kritika, which makes her so right for the job she is in today, is her ability and her willingness to work with the ecosystem to share. She's one of the most generous mentors you can get, to share, to collaborate, and to sort of move the entire ecosystem along with her. So I was actually thrilled when she took on the role at SoftBank. And I can see the impact she's having, not just in SoftBank, but also on the board of directors of so many companies like WeWork, etc. So, Kritika, absolutely fantastic to have you here with us today. And thank you so much for taking the time.
Debjani, delighted to be here, delighted to have, shattered many of those glass ceilings together, and delighted to have cheered for many of the glass ceilings you have shattered. So again, absolutely delighted to be here.
Thanks a ton. Thanks a ton for taking the time to do this. Given we have limited time, I'm going to dive straight into the questions. We've got some really interesting questions for you. So the first one, Kritika, is about a bit of a rear view mirror look into 2020. 2020 was, frankly, more than anything else, a dichotomy of sorts, tremendous dichotomy of sorts. On one hand, we witnessed unprecedented suffering, loss unleashed by COVID. It was absolutely tragic. And on the other hand, we witnessed the power of science, the power of technology like never before. In fact, I think the pandemic offered opportunities to innovate like we have never seen before. Do you believe, Kritika, that we were able to leverage these opportunities to the fullest to up the innovation game? Or is there anything we could have done differently?
Yeah. So, Debjani, I want to start by acknowledging the deep losses that were felt across the globe and that we're still feeling. Whether it was COVID, or if I think about the United States, we saw a ton of racial injustice closer to home. There were the California wildfires. So we saw deep losses at a global level. And on the other side, as you said, there were silver linings. One silver lining is the miracle of a vaccine that we have in record-breaking time. And kudos to all of the scientists, everyone on the front line who really helped us get to where we are today. From where I sit, Debjani, in Softbank Investment Advisors, manager of the 100 billion plus Softbank Vision Fund, we have over 100 portfolio companies across Vision Fund 1, Vision Fund 2, with the common investment thesis that the AI revolution is underway and it's transforming every industry as we know it. So as I look back in the rear view of 2020, we saw tremendous acceleration and adoption of digital services. And we saw that across sectors, right? Whether it was e-commerce, edtech, healthcare, enterprise, across sectors. We actually did an analysis, Debjani, of our portfolio companies, the sectors they were in, and we classified them into industries that were negatively impacted by COVID, positively or neutrally impacted by COVID. And we found that actually most of them fell into the neutral or positively impacted category. E-commerce adoption, what happened in 10 years in the US, we went from 6 to 16% adoption. In COVID, we went from 16 to 27% in a matter of weeks. So that was a kind of acceleration, right? Adoption that would have taken many, many years crystallized into a few weeks. And we saw that in companies like Zoebank, education, an academy in India, neuro autonomous delivery space across verticals. To your question of was it experienced to the fullest, and could we have done more? I actually think, again, we could have done more. And one example, I'm on the advisory board of the Friends for Teach for India that serves over 30,000 of some of the most economically disadvantaged students in India. And Debjani, I'm grateful for NASSCOM's partnership here, but they had a huge scramble to get digital devices to their students. And, we're still working on that. It impacts education, people dropping off of the system that could have a generational impact. So, a lot of progress, but certainly impediments for it being used to the fullest. I do think that the progress, there is no going back. The pendulum might shift back a little bit in terms of how quickly the acceleration has happened, but the shift is permanent, and I look forward to all of us embracing it.
Absolutely. I think the shift is permanent, as you said it. Um, and it's also a shift in how we think. It's also a shift in behavior. And to me, that is the most important change that I think 2020 has brought about, because it's really impacted how we think and how we behave. Uh, and I don't think any sector or any vertical has actually been spared. Every sector, every CEO, every founder has had to rethink business strategies significantly. And we've also seen a tremendous mindset change within the startup entrepreneurs. In fact, NASSCOM just came out with the startup report, tech startup report. And one of the most interesting trends that we called out was the change in the founder playbook, the entrepreneur playbook. Uh, Kritika, you would be seeing a lot of this play out. And what are some of the key changes that you have seen in the innovation ecosystem that you believe will actually strengthen the ecosystem going forward even further?
Debjani, to me, the biggest thing that jumps out is the premium on the pace of progress and the pace of how quickly things need to happen. We have huge challenges in this world, and I think COVID showed us how we could react in weeks or days of something that we might have thought otherwise would have taken us months or years.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, and I saw that across the board, across our entrepreneurs. Right? First, they were, of course, focused on making sure that their employees, their clients were safe. And the second big focus was what are the new challenges, new opportunities, and how is it that we can respond quickly? Collective Health, one of the other companies that's disrupting the health insurance space in the United States. I sit on the board of Collective Health. Within weeks, they had a product that enables safer return to work. And within months, they had partnerships with partners like urban sitters that allowed for safer childcare so that parents could go back to work. And that happened in weeks. Our dear friend Anu Acharya, Map My Genome, spoke about how they put up a COVID testing lab in the airport, working 24/7 in 15 days, right? I really hope that as we look back on this period, we think about that pace and see what principles we can take that allows us to sustainably recreate some of that pace in solving some of the world's biggest challenges. Apart from pace, maybe I'll highlight two other things. One is the need for a multidisciplinary approach. The challenges of tomorrow are going to require multidisciplinary expertise. Another company that I work with, Improbable, they have simulation software for massively parallel, multiplayer, persistent applications. And they worked with the Royal Society alongside epidemiologists, alongside policymakers to assist with modeling of the pandemic and help inform the UK's response. So again, it required multidisciplinary expertise to solve the problem. And I think we're going to see that more and more, both across companies as well as even within a company. And maybe the last thing that I'll say that was really heartwarming, Debjani, to see over COVID was the investment in community. The amount of people who were sharing was tremendous, whether it was sharing within a company. WeWork China, for example, they came out of the pandemic earlier than the other countries, and they were sharing best practices for sanitation, HVAC systems, and WeWork took those lessons and made those changes across the globe, or sharing between companies. At Softbank, we brought together small groups of CEOs to talk about pressing issues. And so again, we saw unprecedented sharing, and that only strengthens the entire community.
Absolutely. I think 2020 brought out, yes, the worst in some of us, but absolutely, I think it also brought out the best in a lot of us. And, there's so much to be grateful for. Talking about change, Kirthiga, what is changing in the VC ecosystem thanks to the crisis, or the VC mindset with thanks to the crisis? I mean, what are you guys looking at differently, or what are you guys prioritizing differently?
So when COVID hit, the first thing that we, like our founders and entrepreneurs that we work with, did was focus within our portfolio. Right? How is it that we can support our entrepreneurs, prepare for the worst, rethink strategies, pivot to becoming leaner, more profitable? And that was actually something that we started even in 2019, that shift. And that shift helped provide that baseline to really accelerate that during COVID. Once we did that, we stepped back to think about, again, investment themes. Andy Grove, one of the leaders who both you and I admire, said market share is won and lost at times of transition and disruption. And certainly we have seen transformation over the last year that I certainly hope we won't see over a lifetime again. But that created those opportunities for innovation. And so we met with entrepreneur after entrepreneur who had bold ideas for how they were thinking differently about their business. One thing that stayed the same was the fundamental and the thesis of AI and data changing the world. In Fund 2, we have made, just over this past year, we have made about over 14 investments across sectors, whether it's real estate tech, health tech, again, you name it, consumer, enterprise, across the globe. And that is something that has stayed the same, Debjani.
On that note, Kirthiga, are there any sectors that you feel uh, that will sort of lead the recovery or lead the pace of innovation going forward? Which are the sectors that excite you the most?
So, this disruption, we are seeing, again, accelerating sectors across the board. Softbank Vision Fund, we invest in e-commerce, edtech, frontier, enterprise, logistics, transportation, real estate tech, agriculture tech. And I think there is so much more that needs to be done in each one of these industries, right? Sustainability, climate change, again, big pressing problems that all need innovation. Personally, where I'm spending my time on is in the enterprise side, is in health tech. As we think about a sector that is just ripe for So much change, so much disruption using AI and data. Again, health tech is pretty top of mind. And the third area that I personally spend time on is in the frontier tech space. So I get to work on everything from quantum computing to additive manufacturing to we'll also see a lot of innovation in silicon. One of the portfolio companies I work with is Fungible. They're a fabulous semiconductor company that's transforming data center infrastructure. So while we talk a lot about the software side, I think there's a ton of innovation that we're seeing on the silicon side as well to enable the disruption that needs to happen.
I mean, I'm thrilled that we are continuing to see innovation on the silicon side. That's something I'm also very close to, because that's ultimately what's going to drive the innovation cycle across everything else. So I'm really glad that's not stopping. Kritika, I want to change tracks a little bit and talk about the software product ecosystem. You know, that's most of the audience here today is from that ecosystem. We've seen tremendous growth opportunities globally as well as in India in the software product ecosystem, driven by accelerated adoption of cloud, the move to SaaS. Um, but the one thing that we always struggle with is, do we have enough of a product mindset in India? Because we've mastered the services mindset and culture, and we know absolutely how to do it. But do we have enough of a product mindset in India? And is that what's going to hold us back ultimately? Any thoughts you have on that and what India could do to strengthen the ecosystem further?
Debjani, one, I think we need to continue our leadership on the services side and build our leadership on the product side. The first thing that came to mind when you asked me that question was a conversation I was having with one of the senior managers in India, where I was talking to them about what they do, and I asked them about their key stakeholder. And the first thing they told me was that their key stakeholder was their US counterpart. And one, I had to pause to absorb that reaction, that answer. And then as I spoke more to her, I actually had to reorient her and say, no, you're writing your software, you're developing for a certain set of customers, a certain set of consumers. And that's what you need to be grounded in and rooted in. And that's what you need to think about first. Then think about your organization, your team, then think about your firm, and your success will be a byproduct. But let's start with that sharp focus on the consumer. So I think that's one that we really need to encourage and we really need to build. And I am so excited about many of NASSCOM's initiatives that I've heard of. I've heard of the initiative that you're bringing together product managers. I've heard of the Deep Tech Club, and I could not wait to see the next set of unicorns from that Deep Tech Club companies. Debjani, it will happen totally. And what would I say other than that focus on customer centricity? We spoke about the multidisciplinary approach when it comes to working across companies, but even within a company, it's going to be increasingly important to be multidisciplinary. One of the companies that we recently invested in is Pear Therapeutics. Debjani, they are creating a new category of medicine, which is about software as a drug. So this is purely software, goes through an FDA authorized process, prescribed by a doctor, reimbursed by insurance. And it brings together a team that has neuroscientists, medical devices, biotech, software, and their first few targets are opioid use disorder, substance use disorder, chronic insomnia. All of these, the need for all of this just significantly accelerated even during COVID. And that team is doing just fabulous work, and some of the results of what their prescription digital therapeutics are showing is simply impressive and much, much needed. So I think my ask and what I would ask the ecosystem to think about whether it's the academics, whether it's the private sector, the public sector, organizations like NASSCOM, is what are you doing to bring together multidisciplinary teams and have that sharing of ideas that's going to be really needed to solve tomorrow's problems. And
This
maybe
is
the last
such an
thing,
important one that is. Sorry, Kritika, go ahead.
yeah, no, go ahead. I'd love to get your reaction. And I had
No,
one more thing.
I'm just, well, that's what you talked about is something that I feel is at the core of this problem, the mindset problem that we keep talking about, and it's something we have to fix, frankly, starting with our education systems.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. Right? At Stanford Business School, we are seeing an increasing amount of collaboration. I mean, we always had a joint degree between the education department and the MBA, or law and MBA, or the engineering school. But we're seeing increasingly so many different collaborations between the different schools. And it is something that we need to be thinking about more and more. Even in K through 12, how can you bring together interdisciplinary approaches? So important.
Yeah.
And the last thing I wanted to share, Debjani, was I know Scott McNeely was also speaking at NASSCOM Product Conclave, so I had to share this story. I worked for Silicon Graphics as I was looking at the high performance computing shift. The Silicon Graphics campus today is the Google campus. Of course, our biggest competitor was Sun Microsystem when I was at SGI. And Debjani, do you know who has Sun Microsystems campus today? Take a guess. Take a guess.
Who?
SGI is Google, so Sun Microsystem is Facebook. So Facebook has Sun Microsystems office today. And if you go to the Facebook office, on the front, you will see a big like sign. At the back, you will see the original Sun Microsystem logo, because Mark Zuckerberg wants to remind us every single day that if we don't stay focused on the customer, focused on where the technology trends are going, where the industry trends are going, we could be a sign on the back of another,
Wow.
rising. So it's something so important for everyone to remember at every stage, not just the startups, is to have that focus on the future.
I mean, on that, that's a wonderful story and such an important one for I think all of us should have that sign on our desks, put up to remind us every day. Kritika, thank you so much for taking the time, for talking to us. It's always fabulous to have these conversations with you. We always get to learn so many new things, and hoping to get you in India very soon in person so we can continue with these conversations in person. Have a lovely day, and thank you so much for taking the time.